So just to sort of pick up on that and try and wrap that up, you said before, Mr Harfield, to paraphrase, that perceived conflict of interest is a real issue, and perhaps that the Chair's letter was unwise in that sense.
No, the Chair's letter addressed the actual conflicts of interest, and we had acknowledged, and the Chair has actually acknowledged in public, that our handling of perceived potential conflicts of interest was not adequately done.
Or not comprehensive, perhaps, is another way of putting it. So just bringing back to the cultural element then, I touched earlier on, at a distance this looks very matey, one thing leads to another, and cultural issues and perception issues are important, and you acknowledge that, I can't remember your precise words, ordinary or normal kind of socialising will have occurred throughout this engagement.
Yep.
What would you describe as ordinary or normal socialising then?
For example, that in regards to some of the examples that you gave, that when people are working side by side with each other on a day-to-day basis, will socialise after work and things like that, like Friday night drinks and etc.
Can you rule out the fact that any such functions would have been paid for by the contractor?
It depends on what, in regards to social functions,
hospitality of any sort?
There may have been, for example, ICCPM putting on an evening where there are people, for example, talking about complex program things where they have paid for the drinks, etc.
Do you have any policies or procedures around this within the organisation,
yes,
given the fact that this perceptions arise?
We do across the board for any of our suppliers that we have. We have declarations of interest and conflicts of interest protocols.
Well, they don't really mean much, but you have them. And do you have any record of these kinds of things? I'm just curious, trying to reconcile the culture of the organisation with these kinds of things that give rise to real perceptions around matiness and closeness, which does appear to be part of the record.
And there are a couple of examples that are actually detailed in the audit report where those occasions did occur, that there were declarations made post to ensure that there was no seen to be conflict of interest. So there's a couple of examples that are actually in the report, but that's part of the conflict of interest declarations and updating those records as those interactions occur.
Okay, and so you're comfortable that all of those declarations were made?
Some of those declarations weren't made, and some of them were actually highlighted of not being made in the audit report, and that's one of the areas of improvement that we've made.
Ms King.
Chair, it's clear, and there's no argument about the manifestly inadequate procurement process around the ICCPM services for a unique and very, very significant project, as the Chair has noted, for the nation. There's an admission of there's been a number of failures, and there's also been a lot of futile wishing for the benefit of hindsight in all of this. The Auditor General's identified the need for a change of culture, and admirably Airservices have taken that on board, and one hopes that will proceed unhindered. What my question in all of that, and after what we've been speaking about today and the reports that have been put before us, is in all of this, has there been any turnover of personnel, and particularly in the senior management who have led Airservices Australia into this situation?
There's been significant churn at the senior ranks of Airservices over the last couple of years. For example, the Chief Financial Officer and the Chief Executive Officer left the organisation in the middle of last year, and during the last 12 months we've seen a number of other executives and senior managers leave the organisation.
And has the board changed at all, or the governance structure?
The board has gone through its usual changeover and cycle depending on terms of board members, etc.
When people left the organisation, was there any performance feedback from them, and then with new people coming in, have you set up performance management processes? In general speaking, yes. I mean,
Some people have left the organisation from performance reasons, others have left of obviously their own volition, but part of the change process that we're going through is to build that accountable performance culture, which actually has that as part of very much managing the performance of individuals and holding people to account. One of the things that our organisation from a cultural perspective would talk about accountability and responsibility, which is all fine, and you can say that I'm accountable for X or responsible for Y, but the added element that was probably part of the cultural piece was no one was being held to account.
Yes, yes.
And that is one of the areas that we're focusing on, that people's performance, and if they perform, if not, then they need to be held to account.
Thanks, Mr. Harford. I look forward to hearing that accountability is put in place.
Yeah, it's something that we're very, very focused on, and it's something that, and very much these issues are, and one of the reasons why we actually have welcomed this report in a sort of bizarre way is that it is actually a symptom on some broader issues that we had within the organisation, particularly around that accountability, and that's the area that we're tackling at this moment in time.
Before concluding, Auditor General, is there any further comment you would like to make on the evidence you've heard from Mr. Harfield?
I don't think so, no.
Does it? Okay, well, thank you very much for making the time to attend the hearing this morning. The Secretariat will be in contact if the committee has any further questions.